In Donald Trump's message, whether you like it or not, his message has been consistent. And he's saying, I have to stop these deficits. So what do these countries do with all of their profit? This is the big, like aha moment that we all have to recognize. What they do with their profit is they buy US debt like Treasuries and US stocks, where the US stock market is trading so much higher than every other stock market is because all of the global trade surplus, all the global trade profit is being invested into US stocks.
The world's economic order is being rewritten in real time, and Jack Mallers is here to break it all down. As Trump launches aggressive new tariffs and promises to fix America's trade deficits, Mallers explains how this isn't just about politics. It's about the death of US exceptionalism, the unraveling of global trade, and the rise of neutral assets like Bitcoin. With foreign capital fleeing stocks and treasuries, and the Federal Reserve gearing up to print trillions to fill the gap, Jack lays out why Bitcoin is uniquely positioned to thrive in this new regime. It's not just a hedge, it's a lifeboat, a monetary system that works when the old one fails. If you're trying to understand why everything feels so chaotic, and what comes next, don't miss this one. Hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Do you think the US is ready to give up reserve currency status?
This macro setup, what we're living through with Trump, this new administration, global trade, tariffs, is very good for Bitcoin, very good for neutral reserve assets, very good for a monetary policy that's distributed, that's fixed, and a money that's accessible to everyone. So, first, I just want to draw everyone's attention to Trump, and he's claiming he wants to fix the deficits. So for those that don't know, we've had Liberation Day in the United States of America, where Donald Trump has announced the tariffs that the United States will be imposing on other countries around the world, meaning that other countries, in order to get access to the U.S. economy, to export stuff into our country, they're going to have to pay a tax. Trump's big message in his first administration as president, 2016, campaigning and running to be president now, since he's been elected as the president and been running the White House, his message has been consistent. His message has been the same. What has Donald Trump's message been? His message has been, I'm here to fix our trade deficits. We cannot operate with such a big deficit in this country and rely on the rest of the world to make all of our stuff. This, do I have audio? Who's saying no audio? All right, I'm going to keep going. What Donald Trump is saying, by the way, this is not a political podcast, okay? This is not a left or a right or an up or a down. This is a Jack Mallers show. That's my show, and it's my opinion, okay? Miss me with the politics stuff. As traders, as market participants, as Bitcoiners, I'm not caring about politics right now. Don't give a crap. Kid show. Don't care, okay? So I'm going to go through my interpretation of U.S. politics. If it offends you, and it's probably something to do with you, not me, because I'm not advocating. I'm not saying who's right or wrong in the political lens. I'm saying what they're doing, what they're saying, how it matters and impacts Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's going to be the thing that changes the world. It's the best vehicle for us to express a better future, and that's what I'm here to cover. Very quick disclaimer. Okay, what is Donald Trump's message? Donald Trump's message is look around you. Look at your phone. Look at your clothes. Look at your laptop. Look at the things that you're washing yourself with in the shower. None of it is made in America, okay? When we have took on the responsibility of being the world reserve currency, the US dollar, our job is to export the dollar and import goods and services. That is what we call operating in a deficit, okay? We are importing debt and real stuff like oil, energy, food, metals, and we're exporting currency. We're distributing out the US dollar. And Donald Trump's message, whether you like it or not, his message has been consistent. And he's saying, I have to stop these deficits. We're operating in a trade deficit. None of the stuff that we use in our lives is made here in America. Why is that a bad thing? One, there's not enough jobs here in America, and the middle to lower class has been getting crushed here. We're becoming hyper financialized. Two, this is a national security threat, because if Russia or China decide not to like us very much, then none of the stuff we use in our lives, they're going to make for us anymore. What if they decide they don't want to make our weapons? They don't want to make our phones. They don't want to give us energy and oil. Then what? Then what? And so his message is we have to focus on ourselves. We have to focus on producing stuff here, and we have to focus on our deficits. So with these tariffs, he's making a very bold claim to the rest of the world and saying, you know, this world monetary economic order that we set up post-World War II, where the U.S. was strong and we were going to export the strength of our country and our economy through our world reserve currency, and we'll give you all dollars and you'll give us real stuff. Well, I'm ending that. We're going to impose tariffs and we're going to fix our deficit and your surplus. Because guys, if we're operating in a deficit, other countries are operating in a surplus. They're exporting stuff to us, oil, gas, food, energy, raw materials, and they're getting profit. They're getting dollars, okay? So that's step one, is Trump saying, I'm fixing the deficits. Now, the really important thing to understand is how world trade works today when we're operating in a deficit and other countries are operating in a surplus. When a country gives the United States in trade energy, oil, food, metals, something, stuff, they're getting a bunch of dollars in return, okay? So let's say I'm a country and I'm manufacturing a bunch of stuff for the US. We have trade. I send them all the stuff and I get a bunch of dollars in return. Countries do not sell those dollars for their local currency and invest locally. Why? Because it's very important that they keep their currencies weak. That would strengthen their local currencies. If you want a competitive export market, you have to have a weak local currency because you want cheap labor. You want cheap exports, okay? So what do these countries do with all of their profit? This is the big, like, aha moment that we all have to recognize. What they do with their profit is they buy U.S. debt, like Treasuries, and U.S. stocks, okay? So the reason there's been this U.S. exceptionalism, where the U.S. stock market is trading so much higher than every other stock market, is because all of the global trade surplus, all the global trade profit is being invested into U.S. stocks, okay? Countries take their profit they're making in global trade. They do not invest it in their local economy because it will strengthen their local currency and weaken their ability to export their products and materials. So they take their profit and they buy treasuries and they buy U.S. stocks. And so now, if the U.S. new economic policy is hey, foreigners, take your stuff and get the hell out of here. Take your money and go home. By the way, I don't like the fact that you have a surplus, and I don't like the fact that we have a deficit. What is that going to do to the Treasury and the stock market? That's a huge problem, because all the people that were willing, if I'm a foreign country and Donald Trump is saying, hey, take your money and go home, okay, fine. But my money is in your treasuries and in stocks like NVIDIA. So taking my money and going home is dumping all my stocks and dumping all my treasuries and taking my capital and going home. And so why are you seeing massive sell-offs, especially in the stock market? Is because a lot of the buyers of U.S. stocks and U.S. exceptionalism is foreigners because of the surplus they are getting in global trade. And so if the United States is saying, we're no longer putting up with you operating in a surplus, we no longer want a deficit, then that is very bad for stocks. One of the reasons I personally believe Bitcoin will inevitably decouple from the stock market is because the stock market has been treated as this excess fiat liquidity monetized expression of currency debasement because it's where a lot of the global trade surplus has ended up. People don't want treasuries. They'd rather own Google stock. That's the truth. They would rather own forward earnings in Facebook and Amazon and Apple and in Google than long duration US debt instruments. Does all of that make sense? So if Donald Trump is going to say, I want to realign the economic order globally, he's going to crash the stock market and there's going to be a lot of disturbance in the treasury market. Now, how is this all good for Bitcoin? Okay, when Jerome Powell came out in March meeting for the Fed and said, I'm slowing down QT and I'm going to soon enact QE. And when Secretary Bessent of the Treasury said, we're looking into the SLR, which would allow banks to buy unlimited amounts of treasuries, what are these guys saying? They're saying if foreigners aren't the buyers of US treasuries and aren't giving our markets in America liquidity, we have to find it somewhere else. If China, if Russia, if these countries are not buying our debt and are not investing in our economy, who will? And when Trump is saying, Jerome Powell sucks, Jerome Powell sucks, Jerome Powell sucks, because Donald Trump needs Jerome Powell to enact quantitative easing to print money. The only way to solve the deficits is to print money. This is the massive aha moment that you have to realize is, listen, what Donald Trump wants to do is fix the deficits. He doesn't like that other countries are operating at a surplus and having jobs like manufacturing jobs, lower class jobs. They have a real middle class. None of these things the United States of America has. Secretary Bessent is getting out in the media and he's saying 90% of the stock market is owned by 10% of our population. We highly bias the upper class. You either own financial assets and you benefit from the currency debasement, or you don't and you get screwed. And Trump is saying my voting bloc, half my voting bloc has never owned a stock. They want manufacturing jobs. Half of them aren't college educated. Half this country doesn't go to university. And I need to reindustrialize this country. We have to produce stuff here. We have to defend against the fact that we're reliant on the outside world to actually live our lives. That's fine. All that's fine. If he wants to do that, whatever. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. That's not what this podcast is about. What this podcast is about is, okay, if you're going to tell other countries no more surplus, take your money and go home, their money is in NVIDIA. Their money is in our debt. They're going to dump treasuries. They're going to sell our stock market. Who's going to buy it? Who's going to replace the bidder that was China, that was the Middle East, that was Russia, that was Europe? Who's going to replace that? And if you listen, it's the Federal Reserve and it's the US banking system. The amount of money that they're going to have to print in order to make up for the realignment of global trade. And when the White House comes out and starts self-admitting that the US dollar positions us unfairly to operate in a deficit and have global trade, if you want to be the world reserve currency, you have to operate in a deficit. Your job is to give the rest of the world your currency and import debt and real stuff. So if you don't like that setup, then you don't want to be the world reserve currency. It's just plain and simple. So when people say we're moving towards a neutral reserve asset, things like gold are valuable. Things like Bitcoin are valuable. Why? It's obvious. Because no one wants to be the world reserve currency. No one wants to operate into deficit. No one wants to deindustrialize. No one wants to eliminate their middle class. No one wants to disadvantage the poor. Nobody wants to over-financialize. Nobody wants any of these things. That's what Donald Trump is saying. But what we're living through, listen, short-term pain, short-term volatility, we've been saying it over and over and over and over again on this podcast. If you're caught off sides today, you haven't been listening. I'm telling you, volatility in the short term, it could go up, it could go down. The point is it's not going to stay flat. It's going to bounce around. It's going to try and scare you out. It's going to try and shake you out. You got to stay solvent. You got to live your life. Make more than you're spending right now. Do not use leverage. Go outside, be productive, smile, hang out with your friends, just breathe, relax for a second. We cannot effect so much change without volatility.